Sadistic Penguin Studios presents the At the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
And Tony Chalsa Barrett.
I don't know this industry jargon, YP, MP, whatever, okay? All I know is that I cannot get a record contract. We cannot get a record contract unless I take these tapes.
It's almost time, so grab a drink, get your popcorn ready, and join the film discussion with two guys from Chicago talking movies.
We're back. Welcome back to the At the Show podcast, presented to you by the Sadistic Penguin Studios. My name is Tom Yumper Garcia, and I'm with my co-host, Tony the Sugar Baggy, a.k.a. Chalsa, a.k.a. the Burton. Bert, how you, my man?
Doing really well. And also speaking for our live band that plays our song there in the intro here next to me. You can't see them. They're also very thankful that you're here tonight. Thank you.
To just like it's the Tonight Show.
It is. Soon they'll be on camera. I promise. But they're in the background here. I promise.
There you go. No, really happy to have you guys here today. Just looking back and looking at the episodes we've done. This is actually episode number 50.
Woo!
So we've done 50 episodes.
Birthday.
Yes, it's pretty big accomplishment considering that when we first started the show, we were a 2-week podcast. Had to take some hiatuses in terms of getting my computer fixed, which is happening now. But then we became a weekly podcast with the start of season 4. So we are at 50, man. This is the 50th episode. I know Uncle Beefloaf says once you get to like 75, you're kind of like in the groove of things. So here's to 75, going up to 75, man.
25 more, yes. Very awesome. It's cool to see, just I like to look at them like DVDs back when I used to buy DVDs and see like, okay, we got 50 DVDs. This is awesome because going back, you can go back to episode 4 and get a lot of good stuff. You can go back to all of them and really just, it's cool to see that many. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. I just happened to look at our episodes today and I'm like, damn, this is 50. So that's pretty crazy. We made to 50. So I guess like an anniversary date for us.
Very awesome.
Yep. But with that tone, let's move along. We gotta we're doing 2 movies today. Not as deep of a film breakdown like we usually do with one single film, but we got a bunch of development talk. I have a crazy theory that was put out there that I read about today. So let's kind of keep moving along because we have another show coming on later on today. If you guys are wrestling fans, the Trios Wrestling Talkers of Baloney, Brian S. and Comic Punk Guy are going to reunite for WrestleMania talk.
Yes. And they're going to tell us that Roman will be taking home the title on Sunday. Yes. I can't wait to hear.
I'm going to text you if he loses.
Please do. But if he wins, you got to text me too.
You'll see something. All right. No. But let's get to what we've been watching, my man.
That's a me. And also, what were you just watching?
So this week, Tone, what were you watching, my man?
2 movies. Just a couple nights ago on HBO Max, I was scrolling through and I saw John Frankenheimer's Ronin. It's loaded with lots of different people in it, from Robert De Niro and Jean Reno to Sean Bean and Stellan Skarsgård. It is directed by John Frankenheimer, who has directed awesome movies like the original Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra. But this movie is awesome. For me, it's been a while since I'd seen it, so I rewatching it. A really awesome car chase, some really awesome gun shootouts with like the sound in the movie sounded pretty awesome when I was watching it. I was pretty blown away. You ever see Ronin?
Yes, I actually like it a lot. I this is kind of like when De Niro started doing, his little like heist movies. He did Heat, then he did The Score.
Yeah.
And then he did, this is one of them, like kind of in that trilogy of them. Yeah, I like this film. I thought it was pretty well. I'm a big fan of Jean Reno. I know, like we talked about this before, but the Professional is a very good film. It's kind of creepy when you look back at it now in terms of like the history behind it. But I liked that film when it came out. I thought Gary Oldman was awesome. I thought Jean Reno was awesome in that film. I also liked him in the Matthew Broderick Godzilla.
Hmm,
He was probably
ooh.
my favorite character in that movie.
Oh, yeah, he was. I mean,
Yeah.
he is good in that, and honestly,
Mhm.
he's top notch, when you think about, just as you mentioned, professional, of course, but, he shows up in the original Mission Impossible.
Mhm.
He's pretty good in too, and, like, as you s La Femme Nikita, it's a okay movie too, all around awesome actor.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I'm a big
Um,
Skarsgård fan, Stellan Skarsgård.
mhm.
He's awesome too.
He's good
And
as
my
well.
other movie I watched was I was looking for an '80s deep classic in the comedy front, and I was, looking through my collection, and I put on Just One of the Guys. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It is classic, like all the other awesome '80s movies. A movie I don't know that, I don't know if it would be made today, but the plot is that, pretty much, really quick, the movie came out in 1985, but, just pretty much the story of a girl who is not able to get to write the lead story on her at her school, so she switches to another school and pretends to be a guy, aka Just One of the Guys. What's really awesome about the movie, is William Zabka is in it, and if you're familiar with him, and if you're not, he is from The Karate Kid. But it's a deep cut. I enjoy it. There's some other people that show up in the movie. One of the dudes in the movie, I'm trying to think here for a second here, who he was, his name in real life, but he's in like a Friday the 13th. I love these movies because so many like little random characters show up that you see in other '80s movies, and this one is no exception. I don't know. Have you ever seen this one?
I've seen this one, like, a long time ago. I don't really remember it. I know it got remade into, I think,
It did
uh, what's her
something.
name?
Was it
She was
Amanda
Amanda
Bynes?
Bynes. What a Girl Wants? No, was that
Yes.
it? Or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
I think yeah, it got
Um,
remade. I remember that one as well. So I kinda
it's
know the premise.
ridiculous. It's like one of those, like it fits somewhere between, 16 Candles and something along those lines where at the end she really falls for the guy. There's just a lot of awesome, I'll call them awesome cliches. Sometimes those happen in
Mhm.
movies where they're like, it's the '80s and you're just like, this is awesome. Where if it happened today in a new movie, you'd be like, this isn't really as awesome, but it's a good one to watch to check out if you get a chance. What have you been
Yeah.
watching, my friend?
Alright, so I picked, 2 drastically different movies. One of them is actually an anime. So I am like I said, I'm a huge nerd, not just a movie nerd, but I also read manga before. I'm a big, like, proponent of, like, history in terms of Japanese culture and samurai. I really like movies with that. I really got into this, series called, Rurouni Kenshin. Um, Basically, it's about a wandering samurai who actually existed, that had a reverse blade, meaning that he can hit you with his blade, won't cut you, but it'll mess you up pretty bad in terms of, damage, and he protected a lot of villages back in the, uh, early 500s, I believe. So, this film is actually based off him. He used to be a previous assassin that had a change of heart. It's basically of his upbringing of how he became an assassin and why he changed. It's called Trust and Betrayal. It's totally gory. I remember the first time I saw a trailer for it was actually just browsing through YouTube, and I happened to see an OVA of it, of just, like, the opening scene is very bloody, very gory, but it's, like, an awesome story, beautifully, beautifully done in terms of the way it looks. It still holds up to today. I pop it in every once in a while, just to get a if I wanna watch something, like, a little serious, but with a lot of action that's kinda different, I'll tune this one in. There was also a series that came out with this that came on television. I believe it was on Cartoon Network for a little bit, but it was over in Japan. I watched all those. Nothing as serious, of course, as this, but, this actually had such a high following and cult following that Netflix actually released from Japan the live action films, and I believe they're still on there. They're very good too and very close to the source material. So if you have time, check that one out. Have you seen this one?
I have not seen this one, and honestly, I haven't seen much of the anime department, so I would sit down, and it's not something I haven't watched it because I don't like it. I just haven't watched it because, seeing you tell me this would be something I would check out because you said it's awesome. So, that's definitely how I am.
Yeah, my man, I can let you borrow this one.
Yeah,
I have it.
definitely.
It's I like it a lot.
Awesome.
And then, this one is actually a shout out to Chirizi, because me and him always go back and forth with blood in, blood out quotes, when we text each other. But I Blood in, Blood Out's been really big on TikTok, and Brian sends me the Blood in, Blood Out Instagram stories, or this comedy. So I watched it, and, it's one of those films that it's basically a retelling of American Me, but a little bit more watered down. It's actually directed by Taylor Hackford, who directed Ray, and also was one of the big people in, La Bamba. So it's totally, a '90s movie with Benjamin Bratt, Jesse Borrell, um, Damian Chapa, who plays Ken later on in Street Fighter. Jesus Christ, I don't know why they cast him for that, but, this is like, one of those old school movies that, like, well, I guess they call it a hood movie, but it's kinda corny, but it's funny.
Uh, Quick story, real quick. Seventh grade. I'm still living in Riverdale, Illinois, and some people from Illinois they move out to Northwest Indiana. That's where one of my friends moved. So I go out there on a Friday night, and his mom takes us to the video store, and he picks out Blood In and Blood Out. And we take it home, and she doesn't know what this is, and we just watch it. It's me and him. I'll never forget it. It's dark. Dude, I don't know in 7th grade if I've ever had such an awesome experience watching a movie, so much so that, like, it's etched in my mind, just the whole entire so when you said it to me, even in the text, flashed back in my mind, the 7th grade time period where I never would have seen this movie until I was older, unless we got to go to the video store and he just picked this random movie, which I don't even know if I remember it being at the theater before that or what, but this was the first time remembering it was at the video store. So watching it, amazing. As you just stated, everything about it. That's what it is.
Yeah, and actually it has Biff from Back to the Future in it, which makes me laugh. He plays one of the cops, and he does
The
it's
cool
totally
one.
Biff, man, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's, probably it's for, a watered down version of American Me. If you haven't seen American Me with James Edward Olmos, it's a little more serious about the prison gangs. This one is kinda similar, but it does have some violence and whatnot. It's supposed to be taken seriously, but even, Danny Trejo has said that, his friends that were in that life, they said, "Oh, you're doing the baby one, the baby movie."
Baby.
Yeah, so it's, it's got a lot of funny scenes, especially when you watch it now, like just the dialogue and whatnot. And Brian saying, "I say chale," that's one of them. Me and Teresi always say suave, Al. It's, one of the lines in there. But yeah, check it out if you haven't. Uh, did you get hair pick in the mail? I should have. That hair pick was badass. So that's what we've been watching this week. Let us know what you've been watching over at the show pod on the Twitters or X, or let us know at our own handles at Lil Yumper or at the Sugar Baggy. So Tone, let's transition right into the main event today. There's going to be no other segments. We're going to go into you know two films. I think that one of them was actually really, really big in a cultural phenomenon that put a really big impact on films going forward. And the other one was maybe a sequel that really didn't live up to the original hype. And that's the Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 movies. When was the first time you saw Ghostbusters, Tom?
Early. I mean, we're talking these were movies that were played in my house by my father quite a lot. So again, 5, 6, 7, as soon as they're coming, it as soon as I could remember movies, pretty much, I remember both of these. I actually remember in like the late 80s and early 90s, part 2 was on television a lot. So I remember in that early, like when I was 10 or 11, I probably watched part 2 quite a lot. But definitely, as you just stated, definitely a huge cultural impact.
Jackie says, I love 2 and don't care who knows it.
Right.
Movies I said are subjective. So that whoever you like what you like, and we'll get into it. I don't think 2 is a bad movie, but I know people who don't like it, which is surprising. My first time watching it, actually, I was introduced to the real Ghostbusters first, the cartoon series.
Hmm.
Um, because I'm a little younger than you, so that was out like '86. So that I started watching that, and then I actually saw the real film one day. My dad was flipping channels on Channel 9 WGN one time. I watched some of it there. Noticed that we had the VHS, popped that in and watched that. Loved it. Then when the second one came out, I watched it rented that one at the video store, Masterpiece Video. We saw it, it came out. My parents rented it for me and my brother, and we watched that one. Um, so I love both of them. I had the Proton Pack, I had the Trap, I had the Ghostbusters, the Ghostbusters, Ecto 9, that I had the
Oh, yeah.
car, I had all that as
I
a
had
kid.
the firehouse. I had the little figure. In my head, I could see the Egon figure in my
Mhm.
head now. Really awesome.
Yeah, so I really liked, the
Love
Ghostbusters.
keeps taking me higher in that song. Honestly, when I think back to some of my earliest musical memories, it's that scene in the movie in part two when they're because at that age of 10, I'm listening to that song, but we'll get to it later. We'll get to it
Yeah,
later.
yeah, I have some trivia for that one too, some, nice
Awesome.
little,
Very awesome.
a
Very
hidden
awesome.
hidden little trivia for that one. But with that tone, we were to get into our intro, so let's go into the development of these 2 films. So let's get into that, my friend.
Let's do it.
In my thoughts, I use the technique of positive visualization.
Such a great song.
Yes.
Um, so first we're gonna get into a little back history of the writer of Ghostbusters, which we all know is Dan Aykroyd. Uh, Dan Aykroyd really does believe in ghosts. He actually has a high understanding of, phenomenons and physics, which is really, really crazy. And I was reading about him. He also has his family is also really, really into the paranormal. Aykroyd's great grandfather was a renowned spiritualist. The family had its own regular medium to channel souls from the other side. His grandfather was a telephone engineer and investigated the possibility of contacting the dead via radio technology. And then his dad authored a well regarded history of ghosts, Strange Lights, Halo, and Daughter and and Photographs. So his dad wrote books. His dad's dad was trying to create communication devices. And then his great grandfather was a spiritualist that was hanging out with mediums. That's pretty crazy, man. Aykroyd used this inspiration and he sat down and wrote the script. Also, he was reading a quantum physics and parapsychology book that article that actually got him the idea of maybe you can trap a ghost. And he was also inspired by ghost films that were made by comics, Abbott and Costello and Bob Hope, Three Stooges, those films that had ghosts in them, but they made it more to a comedic thing. And since Aykroyd is a comedian and, more of a comedic actor, he really kind of pushed it towards that way and inspired it into his own script. His original script was actually written for himself, his best friend, John Belushi. And, if you know Dan Aykroyd, you know you can't talk Dan Aykroyd without John Belushi, the Blues Brothers. They were best friends before Belushi passed. And he also had another person that he had in mind, and that was SNL cast member Eddie Murphy, who he had written the script for. He was hoping to have all 3 of them do this film, and he thought it was gonna be probably, like, one of the best things that ever came out. Unfortunately, when Belushi died, the script went into purgatory. I was reading an article stating that Aykroyd was actually working on the script when he got a call that Belushi had passed, which is pretty horrible, you know, eh
Before you go on,
Mhm.
I've never really talked to you too much about it, but I am a huge, 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 huge John Belushi fan, and I've read 4 or 5 biographies. Honestly, I've never read any biographies more than I have on Belushi because it's to me, it's always the what ifs, what could have beens, what might have happened. And honestly, that last night where John was alive and talked to Dan, you know, Dan was like, "Come on, man, I'm working on something down here, something that's going to be big and huge," and again, that's what's awful sometimes about addiction is that no matter what, John wasn't going to get out of it. But look what he was working on, man. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and he never I don't think Aykroyd really ever fully recovered from it. Like I've seen, they sh photos and video from Belushi's funeral. He showed up on his motorcycle when they were actually already having the body, like, being laid to
Well
rest.
well, it real quick, it's really one of those Belushi's like, "Don't worry, I'm okay, I'll be there tomorrow," and they're like, "Do I go out there? Do I not? Is he okay? Is this always what John is?" And then you don't do it, and then you end up beating yourself up when the truth of the matter is it's all John's fault, you know? John put himself in that position, and unfortunately, that's John.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. Um, but when the script went into purgatory, Aykroyd kept writing it. He was at around 70 to 80 pages at the time. He actually reached out to his fellow co-star and friend Bill Murray and asked him, "Hey, I'm working on this script. Would it be possible for you to be interested in it and make the film with me?" Murray was known for just reading scripts, and he's like, "Yeah, I like the idea. I'm with you. I'll do it." But he doesn't sign any written like confirmation or anything. That's what Bill Murray's always been known to do. He doesn't sign any confirmation. He just kind of says, "Yeah, I'll do it with you." And Aykroyd trusted him, said, "Okay, I got him now." So Aykroyd now has his other cast member in Bill Murray. We're still not sure on the Eddie Murphy thing, but he's looking for a director now. He has to find a director. Aykroyd was a huge fan of Ivan Reitman. If you guys don't know who Ivan Reitman is, of course, he's synonymous with Ghostbusters, but he also wrote Stripes and 1941. Both, one was a John Belushi vehicle, and the other was, a Bill Murray, John Candy, Harold Ramis movie about the military that were both hits. Um, Rittman at first met with Aykroyd, and, I'm sorry, he wrote Animal House, not 1941, that was Spielberg.
Yeah, sorry.
So Rittman, met with Aykroyd. He read the script and was like, "Dude, like, this script's talking about going to space." He goes, "All this stuff you want here this script's gonna be like this movie's gonna be like $200,000,000. Nobody's gonna give me that much money." And they kinda had a disagreement on how the script should be. Uh, he explained to Aykroyd, like, "Hey, we have to dummy it down a little bit, like, water it down so it can be made as a film," and they kinda agreed, "Okay." He's like, "Alright, you know, I don't think you understand what you think it's in outer space, it's more on an inner plane." So Aykroyd is already out there talking about going in other dimensions and whatnot, and Reitman's like, "Yeah, let's just keep it to New York." Like, "Okay, well, let's get the financing and let's get this film, done in terms of getting the people on board, and then we'll talk about script." So Reitman's like, "Okay." He's like, he went to go on to tell Entertainment Weekly about it. He sent it to me and said, "Look, do you think this would be something you'd like to direct with me and Bill Murray?" I read it. It was sort of futuristic, and it was competing groups of Ghostbusters and in outer space. I just thought, "Let's do a comedy ghost movie, but let's base it on the real research." From that, I wrote a script, which is much darker than that was seen and less accessible. So they had a dark script going in. Reitman convinced Aykroyd again to change the script and make it take place in Manhattan, as I mentioned. He also suggested that they go and talk to Harold Ramis. He was a huge fan of Harold Ramis. He's worked with him previously. Ramis's studio was actually across the street from where they were having lunch, and Aykroyd and Rittman went over to Ramis's office, and they talked to him, and Ramis read the script, and he's like, "I can totally help you write this." And they're like, "Well, you know what? Maybe you should be joining as a Ghostbuster, acting it as well." And he's like, the more and more he thought about it, he's like, "Yeah, sure, sure." So they have Ramis now. They have 2 big stars, along with Dan Aykroyd. He's not that huge of a star like Bill Murray or Harold Ramis yet, but he's getting up there. Uh, the next step was pitching it to the studio. And they had to make a budget for this, which I think is hilarious. So Rittman goes to Columbia Pictures and meets with executive Frank Price. Rittman told him about the casting of Bill Murray because Bill Murray was a big, pinnacle to get this thing made. Price is like, "Okay, we're on board, but you have to do something for me. The film has to be made in 13 months, which means it has to be done by summer 1984, particularly June, and, you have to get it out and finished by then." He goes, "How much it gonna cost?" Rittman tells him, "Oh, it's gonna be like 35, $30,000,000." He goes, "How about $30,000,000? That's about what we're gonna need for these special effects." Knowing the fact that Rittman had no idea how much it was gonna really cost for all these because he just, basically threw a ballpark out there. He basically tripled his budget of, um, his previous film that he had done Stripes. He tripled that budget. He's like, "Oh, that sounds reasonable." And Price was like, "Sure, let's do it." So Price signs him, and Columbia Pictures gets whiff of this, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't know if you should be doing this. It's a lot of money." And they're this to the point where the CEO's lawyer is trying to get Price removed. He basically goes and tells, the CEO, "This guy's out of control. He shouldn't have took this movie." And there's a rumor floating around that is still floating around to this day that Bill Murray apparently told Columbia Pictures he would do Razor's Edge, another film they were producing, but only if they let them do Ghostbusters. So Columbia Pictures is now on board. The film needed high special effects that was, needed in terms of as far as this production. It hasn't been done before, and they went with one of the best in the business, Richard Edlund, who you might know from Return of a Jedi, which I thought was pretty cool.
It's very cool.
Now that they have their studio, now they have their stars, they have to do some rewriting here. Now the director and studio have been secured there. There needs to be a rewrite of the script, which is what they did. The initial script was 180 pages, so Dan kept writing, and he continued to develop it. Aykroyd, Ramis, and Rittman began working on the script, first at Rittman's office, then going over to their families on Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. Aykroyd had a home there, and they worked day and night in his basement for about 2 weeks. Aykroyd was willing to rework his script. He considered himself a kitchen sink writer who created the funny situations and paranormal jargon, while Ramis refined the jokes and dialogue. They wrote separately, then rewrote each other's drafts. Many scenes had to be cut, including an asylum scene by celebrities, an illegal ghost storage facility, and New Jersey gas station as another one. Their initial draft was completed when they left the vineyard in mid-July 1983, and a third and final near draft was ready by the early August. When Murray flew to New York after filming The Razor's Edge to meet Aykroyd and Ramis, he offered little input on the script or his character. But having written for Murray multiple times, Harold Ramis said he knew how to handle the character's voice. It was decided early on that Ramis's character would be the brains of the Ghostbusters. Aykroyd was the heart, and Murray was the mouth. Aykroyd drew inspiration from fiction archetypes, but Peter Venkman, Raven Stantz, and Egon Spengler together, and you have the inspiration from the lion, the scarecrow, the lion, and the Tin Man. So this is kind of like a Wizard of Oz in terms of inspiration for Ghostbusters. So what do you think about that, Tom?
Again, a lot goes into this, and Dan Aykroyd is. I know Harold Ramis is an awesome writer. At this point, you're not really able to see what Aykroyd can do until they put the script together. And honestly, though, you ever see Dr. Detroit with Dan Aykroyd? It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a little earlier of a movie with him, but I like. For me, back to the Belushi thing. Belushi wasn't the type of guy. Well, he was a different type of bad guy, but he wasn't the type of guy sometimes that Murray was at times. And sometimes to me, Murray came across a little arrogant. I know that's his shtick, but like Ramis wasn't that way. Aykroyd wasn't that way, but maybe that's why people liked Murray, or was his friend, or maybe, I've heard there was jealousies at times on Saturday Night Live and this and that. Maybe he's now bigger than they are, and he feels a little. I don't know, but it's cool to see all the different things that went into it to make the script.
He also punched Chevy Chase.
Yeah, well, Chevy Chase is his own, it's.
It makes you laugh that Bill Murray punched Chevy Chase.
Oh, I know, it's great. But it's cool though that these guys were able to still work together after Saturday Night Live. I always like to see that. Like, it wasn't like they were on Saturday Night Live and then they never talked again. They were able to put this together.
Well, I mean, it just to go off a little bit of from the regular stuff we're talking about. SNL, like the cast members have always said, like at least the prominent ones, like it's like a family. I mean, look at Sandler.
Yeah.
Spade, he still talks Spade, Schneider, those are his guys. Tim Meadows, Farley, of course. They're on all his films. They were in all his films. I mean, he still uses them till today, Norm Macdonald. Right. They're all like just like family. So I mean, that's kind of cool that they kind of do that. And it's kind of the same thing with this group. Murray, Aykroyd, And even when you start branching out into the I think it's SGTV,
That's CTV. Oh yeah.
SGTV, with Moranis and Candy, those guys were close.
You know,
Um,
that's what's cool is that and those guys hung out with these guys, like the SCTV guys hung out with the SNL guys, and you were going to get to that, I know, later with there's some casting and who was going to be in this role instead of that role, but it's awesome to just see that, to see everybody getting along. You know, I'm not trying to bring up things that just go on our rant, like sometimes
no, no,
on
no.
Twitter, but like, oh, you with this podcast, you with that podcast.
Hmm.
I didn't hear these guys going, you with your comedy show, us with your comedy show. They worked together and look what they created. They created things awesome. And I know this is a smaller scale, but with Ghostbusters, you should, because they did start on a smaller scale. I mean, if you really we're not going to get into it, but the way everybody met at the very, very beginning, it was a small scale that ended up growing to be to this huge scale of what awesomeness is in Ghostbusters.
Mhm. Brian has a cool story here saying Brandy's brother had lunch with Harold Ramis and talked to him about being the art director for his product production company. Nothing ever came of it because Harold died a month later. That sucks.
That does suck. That would have been
Um,
awesome.
so Aykroyd had a concept for the Ghostbusters to have a boss and be directed into situations, but Harold Ramis preferred they to be in control of their own destiny and make their own choices. This led to the development of more distinct identities for the characters. Peter as the cool guy, modern salesman, Ray as the honest, enthusiastic technician, and Egon as the factual, stoic, intellectual. So you kind of see how everything in the development of their characters is built in. Retman thought the most difficult parts of writing were determining the story's goal. Who was going to be the villain? And why were ghosts manifesting? And how towering Marshmallow Man would appear? The creature was more of a many elaborate supernatural entities in Aykroyd's initial treatment. Uh, Originally intended to emerge from the East River only 20 minutes into the film. It stood out to Rittman, but concerned him because of the relatively realistic tone they were taking. So it just makes you laugh reading like what could have been.
Mhm.
And, the fact that it's 20 minutes into the film, if you saw, like, the damn Stay Puft Marshmallow Man coming out of the river just out of nowhere, like, you're like, "What the hell is going on?" So I'm kinda glad these rewrites happen, and yes, Jackie, go get her, Ray. Um, and then we come to Eddie Murphy. Due to Murphy not committing, the role of Winston actually was less involved in Waterdown. Although, Rittman had came out and said that he disagrees with this, and there are conflicting reports. It's we'll get a little bit into more with the casting, but Murphy it was rumored to have been attached to this for a while by Aykroyd and other writers. But there's like Rittman says it was never a real thing, but it is what it is. So we have our casting now. We have Bill Murray as Peter Venkman, Dan Aykroyd as Raymond Stantz, and then we go to the role of Dana Barrett. Now, Dana Barrett was always going to be Sigourney Weaver. She came in for her audition. She told Vanity Fair, "I had an audition for Ivan." What the heck? Oh wow, that wasn't supposed to happen. Sorry about that. Did you hear that?
No, what happened?
Oh, I got a phone call.
No, I did not hear it.
Yeah,
Maybe
it was
it's
on.
my
It was in my ears.
background.
It was in my ears. Okay, anyway, she told Vanity Fair, "I had the audition for Ivan," she recalls. She says she decided to show him her best rendition of a terror dog, the creature that is a possessed Dana Barrett turns into during the climax of the film. "I remember starting to growl and bark and gnaw on the cushions and jump around. Ivan cut the tape and said, 'Don't ever do that again.' And she said within a week later, she got the role." So method acting, folks. The character was originally supposed to be a model until Weaver said, "Why don't we make her a musician, make her more stoic and intelligent?" Which Raymond Stantz, aka Dan Aykroyd, loved. Um, Weaver was also looking to get into more comedy roles. She was in dramatic roles with this movie called Alien and this other movie called The Year of Living Dangerously. You should have answered you should have answered it, Ghostbusters, what do you want? Ghostbusters, what do you want? Oh, Janine. We now have Harold Ramis as Egon Spangler, so we know he's on there. And this is another great character, the role of Louis Tilly. It was originally offered to John Candy, but he wanted to do a German accent with the role and have two German shepherds that were flanked with him all the time. Uh, Caddy said that he didn't really understand the role of Tully and didn't know how to make it funny. Ivan Reitman told him, "That's great job, but maybe next time we'll do something." And he said he went to go offer the role to Rick Moranis, who he knew from Toronto. Reitman told Vanity Fair, he said, "Look, Rick, why don't you take a look at this? I think it's going to be good." Rick read it and in 1 hour called me up and said, "Wow, please thank Candy for me. This is the greatest thing I've ever read." So that's kinda awesome that you have, Rick Moranis as Louis Tully, and I don't think anybody could have played Louis looking forward, at this now.
Well,
What about
no,
you?
I mean, not like that, but it is interesting to imagine John Candy playing something instead. I mean, not that that's like anything else, you know what I mean? Rick Moranis did a great job. You can't
Mhm.
replace Rick Moranis' role, but if we never knew Rick Moranis' role and instead there was a John Candy role in that place, probably nobody would complain either. But that's what's awesome is that both of them worked at Second City TV, and they probably didn't have any hard feelings over it because Candy, from what I read, wasn't like mad or anything. It was just like, nope, okay, and then that's how it went.
Yeah, and he was always, pushing his friends for roles that he didn't like. So I'm pretty sure he could have told, Ivan Reitman too, like, "Hey, check out Rick Moranis," which, that's what they do. That's what friends do. They give each other jobs. Next we have Annie Potts cast as Janine Melnitz. She told Vanity Fair, rounding out the Ghostbusters inner circle, Annie Potts, the drool secretary, Janine Melnitz. If the prospect of playing a character alongside Murray, Aykroyd, and Ramis intimidated the actress, she didn't miss a beat. I was there. I was a theater school actor, not from improv, so their methods were foreign to me, she said. But if you get the ticket on a train, you take the ride. And she said, I wanted to make this my New York movie. I love Annie Potts.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, she's in Young Sheldon. I'm not really a huge fan of Young Sheldon, the show, but she's like probably one of the best parts in there. I loved her in Pretty in Pink.
Great and Pretty in Pink. Really,
Yeah,
really
so
awesome in that movie.
mhm. And then we have William Atherton cast as Walter Peck. Uh, Jackie. We'll get to that, Jackie. Atherton was always the pick to be Peck. Reitman loved his background in the play Broadway and really wanted him for the film. He thought he was very Shakespearean, and Peck was actually pretty well done by Atherton. Spoiler alert: Atherton does come back in the new Ghostbusters, Frozen Kingdom. He reprises his role, but in a different capacity. Uh, Atherton would go on to say, "We decided because it's essentially a cameo that keeps popping up. I didn't want to change my suit, and we decided not to do that. So whenever you saw me in this kind of great big cartoon, you knew what I was representing. Bureaucracy 101, that's my tone. He's everybody at customs on the airport that made your life hell. I grew a beard because I figured, what the hell? If I'm going to be a little strangely bad, I may as well pole vault over the top." And then we had a little Phi Beta Kappa pin. So we really kind of got it down to the visually what he represented. That's just into the mind of Atherton, how he made the character of William Peck, and then William Peck is a dick. Next, we have the great Ernie Hudson, who, man, Ernie Hudson at 78 now, dude, that dude looks like better shape than anybody I've seen in like even me, like in their 30s and 40s. That guy is ripped.
Sure
Uh,
does.
he was cast as Winston Zeddemore. Again, this role was rumored to be for Eddie Murphy, but like I said, Ivan Reitman denies this and says that Winston was always supposed to be there to have things explained to him, more like a character of the audience, so that you can kind of get not left out. You're not supposed to understand these things right off the bat. Like you're not a presumption that everybody knows all these paranormal things. No, Winston has it. His character's there so to be explained to you. Ernie Hudson said that he had to do 5 interviews and auditions to earn this role. It took about a month, which I think is pretty crazy. But happily, he got cast. He's seen shit that will turn you white. Yes, that's probably one of my favorite quotes in the film. So that's our cast, Tone. We have the cast of the Ghostbusters there. We now have, we go on to the music of Ghostbusters. Early on, Rittman and Bernstein, who's actually a producer in the film, discussed the idea that Ghostbusters would feature popular music at specific points to complement Bernstein's original score. This includes Magic by Max Smiley, which plays during the scene when the ghosts are released from their Ghostbusters headquarters, probably one of my favorite scenes of the film. Bernstein's main theme for Ghostbusters was later replaced by Ray Parker's Ghostbusters song. And Ray Parker said that he got the idea of who you're gonna call from an ad he had seen in his sync. Ad that
Never
yeah.
played again.
Yeah, Bernstein personally disliked the use of these songs, particularly Magic. He said, "It's very hard to argue with something like that when it's up in the top 10 of the charts." Music was required for a montage in the middle of the film, and I Want a New Drug by Huey Lewis and the News was used as a temporary placeholder because of its appropriate tempo. Rittman was later introduced to Parker Jr., who developed Ghostbusters with a similar riff to match the montage. There were approximately 50 to 60 theme songs developed for Ghostbusters by different artists before Parker Jr.'s involvement, though none were deemed suitable. Huey Lewis was approached to compose the film's theme, but already committed to this other film called Back to the Future. Could The Power of Love been a Ghostbusters theme?
That would have been interesting.
So that is Ghostbusters 1, the development for that. We're going to go swing into our sequel and go into Ghostbusters 2 with 1989's Ghostbusters. I'm sorry, you're just too damn loud. Uh, so 1989 was basically forcing of a sequel. David Putnam had become the CEO of Columbia Pictures at the time, and when this film 1984 was released, Ghostbusters was a huge hit. You know, we usually go over our numbers in the end, but we'll kind of like prelude that for a minute. So Putnam was basically the CEO. He knew it was a hit, but he had no interest in making another sequel. This caused some disdain for the sequel and the lack of interest in the cast to return. Rittman says mostly those higher than Putnam didn't want the film made. It wasn't just him. And some of the main actors didn't want to make the sequel, mainly Bill Murray. If you know, Bill Murray has gone on part saying he didn't want to do Ghostbusters 3 because nobody wants to see old Ghostbusters run around, which completely is BS because they just made 2 other films.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Murray finally agreed to the film after his film Scrooge in 1988. The film was announced in 1987, but the script was not written. And to add more to the issues, Putman was removed as chairman. He was replaced by Don Steele, who luckily put the film's sequel as a priority. But even though they had these issues with Putman, who hated Bill Murray, by the way, um, the cast had some issues. The main obstacle was the disputes between the principal cast and crew had arisen since Ghostbusters. Harold Ramis later said that there was a little air that needed to be cleared before they could work together again. But in March 1988, a private lunch was arranged for Bill Murray, Aykroyd, Ramis, and a client that they had and colleague, CAA head of business affairs Ray Kurtzman, at Jimmy's, a celebrity restaurant in Beverly Hills. Concerns were raised, such as whether the principals could still carry the sequel because Murray had been away from films for such a long time at the time, and Aykroyd had a series of film failures during this time. During the meeting, the group had fun and decided they could work together again. But there was still some stuff going on because there's months of negotiations followed with Rittman, Murray, Aykroyd, and Ramis negotiate a minimum salary in exchange for an exchange of the percentage of the box office profits. Now, it was rumored that Bill Murray actually came in and asked for $10 million, which I think is crazy at the time. It's 1980s to film. This is why the budget was kept lower for this film, where it was around $30 million, whereas if salaries were raised for this one, it would have been $50 million. The deal was reported to be 10% of the box office profits each. Rittman denied that the figure was that large, but said it was a big one. So there's some conflicting reports about that. After this, the film was rushed into production, which we love films that are rushed to production, with shooting scheduled for mid 1988 with the anticipation of the mid 1989 release. Despite the 5 years it took to produce a sequel and the necessity for special effects, Ghostbusters 2 had a shorter schedule than the previous one and a 1-year turnaround. Michael C. Cross and producer James Medjuck returned for the sequel, each promoted to producers. They were associate producers in the previous film. Michael Chapman replaced Laszlo Kovacs as the cinematographer, and Bo Welch replaced John LaCour as the production designer. So now we have the films already out there. We have the people signed on. And now we have the script. Aykroyd described his first script as really too far out there and too inaccessible. That's not surprising, Dan, because the first script he wrote was really out there as well. Uh, this is part of the script he wanted to do. He wanted to avoid using New York City again. He wanted to set the film overseas and provide a contrast to the first film's climax atop a skyscraper by including a subterranean threat. The giraffe followed Dana Barrett, who was kidnapped and taken to Scotland, where she discovers a fairy ring, a naturally occurring ring or arc of mushrooms, sometimes linked in folklore to fairies or witches, is what a fairy ring is. And she discovers an underground civilization. This kind of reminds me of Labyrinth.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, the Ghostbusters would have had to travel through a underground fluid tube over 2,000 miles long that would have taken them 3 days to traverse. So you're going. We got a little Shawshank in there where they're going through shit, I guess. He eventually decided that retaining the New York setting would allow for the continuity and would better fit the story he wanted to tell, while allowing them to explore underground. That's why we get the underground stuff in this film, is because Aykroyd eventually wanted them to go through tubes. Ramis helped write the rescript for this one and refine it as well. The river of slime in this film was supposed to be a metaphor of urban decay. Also, due to the recent popularity of the Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters, the kids show, the script was more kid friendly, so it's a lot watered down from adult humor, unlike the other film, which you can totally see in these two films. And we'll get into the breakdown in the next segment. But let's go into the cast. Putnam, who was the CEO at the time, had believed he would replace the main cast with lower paid actors due to his hatred of Bill Murray. Although he eventually denied this, but I can totally see that he tried to do a bit Jerry Reinsdorf where he brings in players that don't make money to take over a franchise. Bill Murray was recast as Peter Venkman, Aykroyd as Stantz, Sigourney Weaver came back as Dana Barrett, Harold Ramis as Egon Spengler, Rick Moranis came back as Louis Tully. What's this say here? Did you guys see the meme where a guy picked out the painting from 2 for the baby's nursery? Yes, I did see that. That's great. We have Annie Potts coming back as Janine Melnitz, and her character, the way she dresses in one as more closer to the television series, the cartoon series, which I thought was kind of weird. Peter McNull as Janusz Pocha. The character was supposed to be named Jason originally, and he was supposed to be like the straight man villain to the Ghostbusters. But McNull wanted to do something different, so he changed the character to be Carpathian, and with his accent inspired by Meryl Streep's role from Sophie's Choice. So that's why he talks the way he talks. We also have Kurt Fuller as Jack Hardemeyer, David McGinnis as Mayor Lenny Klotch, who was also in the original, Harris Yulin as Judge Stephen Wexler, Janet Margolin as the prosecutor, William T. Dusselstoff and Hank J. Dusselstoff as Jr. as Baby Oscar. And then we have Wilhelm von Homburg as Vigo. I always love that when I do these podcasts with pronunciations I'm horrible at, and I get like the worst names here. But Homburg, his voice was dubbed over by the great Max von Sydow. He didn't know that his voice was dubbed. He acted out the scene. He did his role. He didn't know his voice was dubbed until the premiere. And when he saw, he got so angrily and walked out. Vigo was based on Vlad the Impaler and Rasputin, which I think is pretty crazy. And yes, he is Vigo. So that's the cast. Going into the music, music is such an integral part of the films. Ray Parker Jr. helped develop an updated version of his hit song Ghostbusters, which was co-written and performed by hip-hop group Run DMC. They're aiming to replicate the success of the original soundtrack. Producer Peter Afterman wanted to hire Bobby Brown, who had reached the success of his hit songs. He also was in, what was the group that Bobby Brown was in?
New Edition.
New Edition, thank you. To secure Brown's involvement, Alterman offered Brown's music label, MCA Records, the rights to Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack. Brown agreed in exchange for a role in the film. And we'll get to where he is. Filming had nearly concluded at the time, but Rittman wrote up Brown as a cameo in the film. The resulting song On Our Own was written by L.A. Reid, Babyface, and Daryl Simmons. The music video features appearances by Inman, Jane Curtin, Dougie Fresh, Christopher Reeve, Malcolm Forbes, Rick Moranis, some guy named Trump, and Marky and Joey Ramone, which I always thought the Ramones are there. When I saw that video, I always laughed about it because the Ramones are there. Brown also worked alone to write and produce "We're Back." The songs on the soundtrack included "Flip City" by Glenn Fry, "Spirit" by Dougie Fresh, and the Get Fresh Crew, and "Love Is a Cannibal" by Elton John. The song "Flesh and Blood" by composer Danny Elfman and Oingo Boingo was written for the film, but Elfman said he was disappointed that only 4 musical bars of it were used. He thought the small usage was an excuse to be able to release it on the soundtrack, and said had he known, he would have pulled the song. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I love there's like 4 or 5 movies Oingo Boingo are in the 80s, and honestly, I'm going back a little bit to the Elton John. What's the name of that Elton John song again? The Cannibal?
It's called "Love Is a Cannibal."
Love Is a Cannibal. I've never heard this song, and honestly, now I'm curious because it's Elton John on Ghostbusters too. That just sounds ridiculous. But again, soundtrack for part 2 wasn't as known as part 1, and to me at least, from what I remember, and Ray Parker Jr. just dominates that first soundtrack. But part 2 is awesome for lots of different things, including Vigo and Peter McNichol, who I like him in quite a lot of different things.
He's covered "Love Is a Battlefield" and changed the words. Wow, Brian.
Class.
Wow. Wow.
But,
So I know that was a mouthful of me talking, and that is actually the development of both the films, Tone.
Awesome. Very awesome. Again, back to the very beginning when I was bringing up Belushi, to hear that the beginning of all this, you were going to do it with a buddy, and now you're on part 2, but it's kind of like a lot of times the sequel, doesn't live up to a lot of people's hype, but, I like the sequel, and a lot of people have different feelings about it.
Yeah. So we're gonna go into the film breakdown, but it's gonna be a little bit different. I'm not gonna go scene for scene like we usually do through each film, because there's 2 films and we'll be here forever. We're gonna go into some favorite and iconic scenes, and I'll throw some information out for whatever ones we pick. But let's go into that, my friend. Let's go into the film breakdown.
Let's do it.
See the arc? He starts down here. He ends up here. Where's my arc, Paulie?
Ever been diagnosed schizophrenic, mentally incompetent?
My uncle thought he was Saint Jerome.
I'd call that a big yes.
Yeah, that's a great scene. That's from the opening scene of The Librarian. Ooh.
Yeah.
It's
tense over.
Yeah. In the library scene, as an addition, there's a part where the books are stacked one on top of the other. This is discovered with Ray calling it a symmetrical book stacking. The whole scene was thought up by director Ivan Reitman that very day as he was driving to the set. That's pretty funny that Reitman's thought of stuff. Funny thing about this whole movie of Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters, was almost none of the scenes were filmed as scripted. Most had at least one ad lib. Most of Bill Murray's lines are ad libs.
It's crazy. It's very crazy.
Yep. So some of the iconic scenes from this film, the introduction of Zool. That's probably like one of my favorite scenes, when she actually sees the eggs pop off the countertop. They start boiling, basically, and then she opens up her fridge and she sees the little tower, and then the 2 dogs and the screaming of Zool. The dynamic voice of Dana was performed by Ivan Reitman, which is kind of funny, and Patty Edwards provided the voice of Gozer. So that's like one of the fun. Like, it's really funny because she screams and just slams the refrigerator. So that's like one of my favorite things, and shows off the special effects for the film. What about you, Tom? What's like a scene that sticks out to you?
Oh, there's this movie is just loaded with them. One that sticks out for me is the whole introduction of Slimer in the library.
Oh, nice shooting, Tex!
I assure you, Mrs. Van Houten, there is no problem with the room. It will be ready promptly at time as soon as your guests are with us.
I like the whole way it's like going like outside of the room, like that, back inside of the room, where nobody knows outside of the room what's going on inside of the room. It's craziness. I love that whole scene. Slimer is awesome. That's the only thing is I wish there were, of course, it would have cost more of a budget, but more Slimer because he's just very awesome.
Yeah, the proton packs used for that scene were heavier than they looked. Some were heavier than others, depending on when the scene demanded. According to Ivan Reitman, none of the actors enjoyed wearing the packs. And while he said that Harold Ramis complained the least, he wouldn't say which actor complained the most. However, it was he did strongly imply it was Bill Murray, so he kind of told you it is. And also, Slimer was based off John Belushi.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that point is why I think it's kind of cool that still after the tragedy of the beginning that these buddies still decided to honor him in a way. And from what I heard, that's exactly how Belushi was at a party with anything that you put in front of him. He would just take it all and throw it
Put
on.
it all down like that.
Yeah, yeah. So it was cool. And again, for the time period, the special effects, I think they still hold up. They don't
Yes,
look cheap.
definitely. Another great scene is when Winston is interviewed and introduced. He doesn't get introduced until maybe I think about 30 minutes into the film. When Janine is interviewing Winston for a job, the scene originally began with Winston listing his qualifications. According to Ivan Reitman in the DVD commentary, Winston was an Army veteran, a former paramedic, and a construction worker. Janine's questioning was considered a funnier opening. In the Brooklyn Triangle, the Ghostbusters fight spirits on a construction site by Winston's father, who chides Winston for quitting the construction business to become a Ghostbuster. The Brooklyn Triangle is a cartoon edition of the Ghostbusters, which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, the introduction of Winston was pretty funny. Just the whole thing that Brian put the whole lines here. Do you believe in UFOs, astral projections, mental telephony, ESP, clairvoyance, spiritual photography, telekinetic movement, full force mediums, the Loch Ness monster, and the theory of Atlantis? Annie Potts is so great in that film. Just her dynamic with them is great, and I love when she said she's overworked and she tells Peter Venkman, I've been working for 2 weeks and I haven't had a break. He told me you're gonna hire help. And he's like, "Oh, I'm free, with all your great skills, you do great in the food service industry or house cleaning industry." And she's like, "I quit better jobs than this." Which always cracks me up. Just that dynamic between the two was great.
It for me, again, if somebody was to ask me if I was on Saturday Night Live or Second City, which role would I have the most fun playing in the movie? I think I would probably have to go with Lois Tully. Just being able to ham it up like that at that party that they're having. Oh, geez. I remember being a kid and that really stuck with me because, well, Moranis is awesome.
Yes, and actually, when he mingles with everybody, with the party guests commenting on the price of, like, the salmon and,
Yeah.
like, other stuff, that stuff was, like, one continuous shot, and he improvised the entire thing, which shows
Amazing.
how great Rick
Amazing.
Moranis is. I also talked this with, actually, my wife today, is the part that cracks me up about that party scene is when the girl wants to leave, and he's like, "Well, maybe if we dance, people will dance with us." And she's like, "Okay." And he just starts dancing. And then, like, the doorbell rings. He's like, "Hold on a second." And he just walks over and, like, he invites clients as a tax write-off. And then we see the famous, "Who brought the dog?" And he runs away. Like, Rick Moranis was so great in the film. You kind of feel bad for him too when Dana says she's going on a date. He's like, "You're going on a date?" Like, total nerd, but, he is hilarious. I cannot see anybody performing
No,
that
not like
role.
that. Not
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, Brian, he did invite his clients, a set of friends, so he could write the party off. And I love the fact when he's talking about all these, even when he introduces his guests, he's saying, he works in a small carpet cleaning company, and they have only 2 mortgages left on their house. It's just like stuff like that to his other people, and people are like, "What?" Um, so imagine Beef Loaf as Louis Tully, the accountant. Another, you have the scene of Peck when he releases the ghost and they go to jail, when he tells them to shut this place down, shut it all down, which is an iconic scene. And like we said, we had a scene Magic that plays when the ghosts are released. That it's an iconic scene. People made memes of it. People make fun of it. But it's so cool when you see the ghosts just flying around that are released from the entrapment center to the outside of New York, and you know when the jail scene when they go to jail, the jail scene was filmed in it was filmed in a prison reported to be haunted, and the Dalleys had scratches all over them, but no apparent physical cause. Ivan Ratman was concerned about returning there, and the crew was very relieved to find out enough footage to complete the scene without returning. So people were actually getting cut in a jail scene by real ghosts, which is pretty crazy.
That's
Jackie says, I tell
awesome.
my husband I'm gonna go have a shower like Louis Tilly all the time. Well, yeah,
I'm gonna
I'm
start
going,
doing that too. That's awesome.
I'm going to have a shower.
Oh,
And
shower.
I just like how he keeps talking
He
to her and she just closes
does.
the door.
He
And
does.
another iconic scene is of Dana being possessed. Sigourney Weaver floating in the air was kind of an ode to The Exorcist, and it was actually a physical effect. The actress was put in a full body cast and attached to a post hidden in the curtains. According to the DVD commentary, the effect came from Ivan Reitman's Broadway experience. So that's kind of cool that they did that.
Awesome. The whole Dana possessed.
Mhm.
Just a really, really great scene.
What a lovely singing voice you must have. Now, I'm going to count to 3, Zuli. If I don't get to talk to Dana, there's going to be some real trouble in this apartment, I think. 1.
Just the way he calls her Zuli, number
Yes.
one. Anytime you want to like upset somebody a little bit more, just throw hey Yumpy, what are you up to? You'd be like, shut up, man. Like if we were in like friends, and he calls her Zuli. It was great. I liked it.
Yeah, he's such a dick in that film.
Yeah, he is.
Um,
Big, big, big.
Probably one of the biggest iconic scenes is a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. When Ray thinks of him and he comes out, I remember watching it as a kid. And was like, this is hilarious. As he come, I thought he was a good guy because
Oh
the
yeah.
cartoon, like he opens up the montage, the intro. He's in the intro, and it looks like he's a good guy. But it was like I just love the effects of it. The Lewis jokes in the film are my favorites. They hate this. Yes, when he goes to Dana's house, Jackie. Oh, that's awesome, man.
The
That is
original, right?
yeah.
I remember getting him right. It's hilarious. Is honestly, I just turned my head and he's sitting here and I forgot I had him. But yeah, to
Yeah.
me, he's just so cool, man. I mean, to me, I just loved marshmallows at the time too. So like getting marshmallow all over me, and it would just been awesome and seeing him like a Godzilla or a King Kong in the streets.
So it totally was an ode to. After the Stay Puft Marshall Man is destroyed, and Walter Peck is delunged by a huge amount of marshmallow goo, which he said was extremely heavy. His next line is garbled due to the marshmallow, and many viewers don't realize that Peck screams, "I hate you, Venkman." A cut scene included on the DVD took place a few minutes before at the same angle, where he tells the police to go up on the roof and arrest the Ghostbusters. So there were a ton of scenes cut from this film, and I'll get to them. But to go back to what Jackie says, there's a lot of like little jokes in here, like when Venkman goes to Dana's house and says, "Oh, they hate this, the knocking." And he says, "Hello, boys, it's Dr. Venkman," and as he has the pressure sensor that he's squeezing in her apartment, and she's like, "Oh, what's that?" And he's like, "It's very technical," which is like you don't really know if he's really doing something or is he just trying, because he wants to hook up with her. That whole dialogue, I always also found it hilarious when she sees him at her outside the symphony, and he's like skipping around in his uniform.
Oh,
It's just so random. Like, and she's like, he's such a weird character in the film that she's attracted to. Um, yeah, but total great chemistry between the two. And then we have the final battle, where they turn to dogs, both Sigourney Weaver's character and Lois Tilly, Rick Moranis's character. And Sigourney Weaver actually said that her kids came up to her and asked her, "Did you really turn into a dog?" Which I thought was pretty funny. Then we have the famous line, "Are you a god?" No. And then when a Sumerian when a Sumerian god asked you if you're a god, you say yes, Ray. Or they go get him, Ray, which is great. Let's show this bitch how we do things downtown. There's just so many memorable quotes in that. The final scene alone, which I thought was great. Um, some deleted scenes are many sequences that were shot or removed from the film. Several shots in the sequence where Venkman, Stantz, and Spengler are thrown off the campus were cut. Several scenes throughout the film where Janine and Egon were cut. One scene occurred outside City Hall before the Ghostbusters drive into a battle against Gozer, with Janine hugging Egon and giving him a coin for good luck. Peter interrupts them by saying, "Didn't your mom tell you not to get involved with no Ghostbuster? Now go home," which I thought was pretty funny. And if you notice, there is he does look at the coin when he at the end when she before he goes up top, which they kind of watered down a little bit. The first time Venkman leaves Dana's apartment, he says to Lewis, "What a woman." That's another part too. That, Lewis totally gets locked out of his apartment 3 times in the film, and he is the key master, which is pretty funny. The green Slimer ghost is discovered by 2 newlyweds at the Hotel Sedgwick. Also cut was a Ghostbuster inspection of the room. A policeman tries to give a parking ticket to the Ectomobile. The car has a pair of mounted scanners on the roof that turn with the cop's movement. When he places the ticket on the cop car's windshield, the ticket burns up. Another scene was Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd play 2 bums that witnessed Lewis being chased by the terror dog. The scene was removed because the filmmakers felt the audience would be confused by seeing Bill Murray and Aykroyd in different roles in the same film. So they're trying to break the fourth wall on that one. Ray and Winston inspect Fort Detmering, where Ray dresses in an old general's coat and falls asleep. When he wakes up, he sees a female ghost above his bed. That part of the sequence was kept in the montage. What'd you think of that whole sequence?
Crazy, man. Real crazy. I mean, definitely. Again, remember seeing it back when you asked me earlier, like when at that very first time. It's definitely sticks with you.
Yeah, it's so strange. And then more scenes of Lewis roaming around New York City as a keymaster. In one scene, he encounters 3 muggers in Central Park and breathes fire at them. In another, he sniffs store windows, then meets a prostitute. When he asks if she's the gatekeeper, she thinks it's a sexual on and says yes. Lewis grabs her and yells "Zool" and plunges his face into her breast, causing her to be upset. I'm glad that was cut. That's kind of weird. Venkman and Stantz discuss matters with the mayor outside City Hall, and the State Puff Marshmallow Man sequence ends with his large hat falling to the ground. Some deleted shots do appear in the film's trailers. There are also cameos in this film, one of them being Casey Kasem, who you might know from Scooby-Doo and not Scooby-Doo, as well as other, hosts of, he did a bunch of voices for Hanna-Barbera cartoons. He has a cameo as himself hosting a radio broadcast during the montage of their Ghostbusters Rise to Stardom. You also have Debbie Gibson as an extra in the tavern on the green. She's sitting at the table adorned with balloons with a pink ribbon in her hair. Only the top of her head shows, while a terrified Lewis screams, "Let me in," from the outside. That's another great part too. Yes, he did American Bandstand, Brian. With when Lewis is getting attacked by the dog, it's hilarious how he's telling everybody in this restaurant, "Let me in, let me in," and everybody just kind of looks at him. And then he gets attacked by a dog, and you hear him screaming, and then he gets quiet, and everybody just goes back to eating their meal. Of Saved by the Bell fame. Yes. And the final one is porn star Ron Jeremy appeared as an extra behind the barricade on the left when Ray and Winston drive up in the Ecto-1 after the containment unit explodes in the widescreen version. I knew that one, that Ron Jeremy was, because people have posted the meme of it. Like Ron Jeremy was the original Ghostbuster. Person's a piece of trash in real life, but it's kind of weird that he was in this. So that's Ghostbusters 1, Tone. Anything that sticks out to you?
Oh, it's awesome. It's amazing. What really sticks out to me though is just how, when you think, I mean, what is 20-30 million dollars in today's money? I don't know, but it seems to be a little amount compared to how awesome this movie really looks. Like if this movie was to come out today, this first one, and they were to put in all the same, it would feel like it would probably be $200-400 million to make, where like to see 20-30 million dollars, pretty cool.
Yeah, it'd probably be more CGI than anything.
That's what I mean, where this movie feels real because it's not heavy on the CGI.
Yeah. So then we transition into Jackie's one of her love of the films, Ghostbusters 2. To go into some of the scenes that were iconic in the film. The opening, I love the opening, just with Dana seeing the the baby carriage go into the street. When they're going to the birthday party, and actually the kid that tells them that they're full of crap is actually Jason Rittman, who would go on to direct Ghostbusters Afterlife. because he's the son of Ivan Reitman, which I think is kind of crazy. A future nominated director that was there. He did Juno and Up in Air, and he's in the Ghostbusters film. And also Rittman's daughter, Kathleen Whitman, plays the girl with the puppy in Egon's lab that he takes. He's that they bring the puppy in. He's like, "Oh, that's so cute." When Dana's like, "Look at him," she leaves. He tells his assistant, "Now remove the puppy," which I think is great. Uh, that opening scene is great when Dana goes to them to talk about what's going on, and then my favorite scene actually in the whole film, and it's like early, is the World of Psychics TV show, and it's because of Kevin Dunn. Kevin Dunn, who's a character actor, you might remember him from he was in this movie called Small Soldiers. Um, he's also in Stir of Echoes. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
he's in
Kevin's
Transformers. He's
He
in
was actually really good on Beep. It was on
Mhm.
HBO with, what's her name from Seinfeld? Julia,
Drew Louis Dreyfus.
but awesome.
Yes.
Awesome in this role.
He's also in another Jackie Love film, Little Big League. He plays the
Ooh,
GM. He plays the
there
GM.
we go.
But, when he's getting questioned by Bill Murray, because he claims that the world will end at the stroke of midnight on, New Year's, and he writes a book about it, and Bill Murray's character questions him, telling him, you're kinda putting on the nose, aren't you? I mean, you're not gonna see any money from, like, paperback sales in, like, a year or publishing right deals. Aren't you kinda selling yourself short in your work?" And I like how he, like, gets so frustrated. He's like, "I've been told psychically that the world ends at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Day." And Bill Murray finishes up by saying, "Well, for your luck, I hope so." It's so great, that scene, and then, the hairless cats, which is,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
weird. And actually, that particular cat became famous again in the later '90s with the Doctor Evil character, Mr.
Ooh,
Bigglesworth.
Mr. Bigglesworth.
Not that particular cat, but that breed of cat. Zombie people stand up. What's up, Dougie? Uh, going from there, Tone, like, what's a scene that you loved? I love that scene, the picture there at the end too.
Command me, Lord! On a mountain of skulls in the castle of pain, I sat on a throne of blood. What was will be, what is will be no more.
To this day, I mean, honestly, again, thing that I'm watching this when I'm 10 or 11. I mean, I just recently went to like the art museum and I see any picture, I'm thinking Vigo's coming to life, man. And it's cool in the movie. Just the way at the beginning, Peter Nick, because again, what's funny is Peter McNichol was on Veep also,
Mhm.
and he doesn't have that voice in any other movie besides this movie. So he's like really hamming it up. I love roles where the actors are hamming it up, and just him and anything with him and Vigo is really awesome.
It makes me laugh, that part when he's, sitting there in his little seance circle and he says, "Oh, command me, Lord," but Vigo goes to this preamble of himself
Yeah.
all the time. He always talks about, like, his nicknames.
Oh yeah.
Like, he's saying his nicknames, and he's like, "We heard this before. We heard." I like how he just, like, is kind of a dick to Vigo, and Vigo just goes through his, like, preamble, and then he gets to what he needs him to do. Uh,
Great.
Yonesh is, like, probably one of my favorite characters in the film too. I love when, he goes to Dana's apartment when they have the blackout
Yeah.
after Ray and, Peter and, Harold Ramis, Egon, they actually drill into the hole, and they find a river of slime, and when they're pulling Ray up, he breaks the, power line, and he goes to her apartment and asks if she's okay, and then she closes the door, and, like, his eyes are flashlights, which
Yeah.
is which is so random. Even as a kid, I was like, "What is going on here?" Um, that's like a great, the court scene when they're in court, the scene with the prosecuting lawyer being carried by the foot out of the courtroom by a ghost had to have her pass through the doorway while wired. The grill and upper wall were removed, and a specially constructed trick grill was put in place. The trick grill had a hinged, spring-loaded segment that the wire could pass through. On the film, it only showed a little bit. Still, in the end, the whole area was replaced with an upper wall and a grill matted in, and you can see how the stunt woman's legs are rotoscoped over it, with the character's hard edges. In the trailer, the segment is shown before the effects were added, and you can see the trick grill and the slight flutter and that show when the wire passes through it. So that's a pretty like intricate like scene, like stunt.
It is.
that was done, and I always laugh because she was kind of a dick to them, and, the ghost drags her off. Also, in that courtroom scene, it makes me laugh when when Lewis is there. First of all, they pick Lewis to be their lawyer, and he tells them, I only do tax law, and I went to to law school at night." And then his opening statement is, "These charges against my clients, they're good people because I once turned into a dog and they saved me." and, his dialogue with Ray when he's like, "Oh, I only went to school at night," and he's like, "Well, that's okay, Lewis. We got arrested at night." So, and then when he's doing basically the witness disposition, he's basically Peter Bigby's telling him what to say and he's getting led by the witness, and then he goes, "Your witness," as he gets mad, and then when they're like, when the judge asked them to help them against the Spicoli brothers, he tells them, "We have this written junction that we can't use these proton packs," and Lewis responds, "Yeah, that thing that she gave me in court." So the judge he actually wins the case and celebrates. It's so that scene is so iconic, and you see him strap up the proton packs and power him up for the first time with the Ray and then the Egon,
that was great.
Yeah, it's a great little, scene, and it's just kinda like it's still a fun part of the film. Even though this film wasn't as popular as the other one, it's still like still has its fun parts, the toaster dance. And, the same person performing the, Jackie Wilson songs in this film was actually the same person that played him in La Bamba. Howard Huntsberry,
Mm.
who played Jackie Wilson in La Bamba, actually sang a higher and, for this film, and performed, which I think is pretty crazy because I thought it was a really Jackie Wilson singing. That's another iconic scene, Tone, the Statue of Liberty, like, break down that one for me.
Statue of Liberty scene is again just really, really, really awesome, and this whole movie again has a lot.
You cut out, bro. Oh, you're muted, my friend.
Hold on a second here. My mic, of course, when you call on me, my mic is messing up here. Continue. I'll do the next scene here.
It's okay. Okay. So just going back to Vigo. So there's a scene where when they go visit Vigo, and that's where he does the "Come on, Vigo, give it to me. Yes, yes, destroy me, destroy me." And he's taking pictures of him. And if you notice, Ray is staring into the Vigo, statue, the picture, which is actually just a photo. It's not really a painting. It's actually just a blown up photo. He stares into it and he becomes mesmerized by it. Well, there's a scene featuring Ray driving the Ecto 1A recklessly at speed during the montage, and as a result of being possessed, it was a result of being possessed by the Vigo painting. It was filmed but not used in the final edit. Some shots are included when you see him running the red light and you see Peter like looking at them, like at the other Ghostbusters, like what the hell's going on. As they go to the song, "Back in Business," which I thought was pretty funny. I would like them to use a little bit more of the cutscenes. I think they would have been a little bit better to the overall story, because they, even though Ray becomes possessed at the end, it kind of makes more sense that, hey, he was possessed before, and that's why Vigo was able to enter him, in the later scene. Which also the part when he comes, "I am Ray, I'm not Ray, I'm Vigo." That part makes me laugh too. But continue, my friend, with what you're saying. But
back to what I was saying again, the whole. I'm going to switch for a second here. Back to Brian was talking over here about the goo that's in the bottom of the city. What's cool at the time when the goo was at the bottom of the city is that they were selling that stuff in the stores, and you could like get the goo in like little canisters and stuff. And I remember having a lot of that goo. And for some reason, talking about part two definitely has got me thinking about the goo. But back to where we were, which was, what was I talking about again?
Statue of Liberty.
So again, I like the scene quite a lot. The Statue of Liberty, the way they again, the special effects in this movie are awesome. A little bit more in depth in this scene than, let's say, some of the other scenes that do not call for that. So this scene honestly is a scene that to me, it's a little bit. Oh, it's not one of my favorite in the movie, but I do think it works well in the whole entire thing. What do you think about the scene?
I just think it's hilarious that they control the Statue of Liberty with a bunch of positive reinforced slime and the NES advantage.
Well, the way it moves and the way it
Yeah.
acts and everything, it's like, again, seeing that for the first time, you're like, again, every time you see the Statue of Liberty, do you not think of this movie and
Oh,
do not think,
definitely,
you know what I
definitely.
mean?
And the
It's
fact that
another thing
you
that's
know,
hard not to.
that Nintendo was such a big part growing up, and it's the controller, the NES Advantage controls it, which, shows how powerful Nintendo was and the reach it had in terms of, the cultural impact, how big it was.
It's
Um,
true.
D Dougie says, "Dude, my mom still brings up how I messed up family carpet with 20 with
See?
25 Sheen slime." But yeah, man,
That
that
slime.
slime was
I actually was thinking about it earlier. It got in my hair, and my mom said we had to go get my hair cut because she couldn't get it out of my hair. Like that's the slime was it was it.
for sure, man, for sure. Yeah, my kid actually has, they have now they made the, Ninja Turtle slime,
Oh, okay.
and he plays with that. It's still disgusting. Uh, but like some little tidbits here. So we mentioned that Bobby Brown did the soundtrack for this film. He's actually in the film when they go to see the mayor. He's actually the doorman that asked them for the proton pack for his brother. So that's Bobby Brown, and they said we can't give it to you. Also in that scene, Bill Murray's brother actually plays the doctor that intakes them for the mental institution.
It's great.
So you see him there. You might recognize him from uh what do you call it? Groundhog Day. He's the mayor, which I always thought was funny.
He's
Um,
really great in The First Vacation. He's like the
yes.
one who's renting you here for some tents, and he's
Mhm.
like eating like the piece of watermelon. It's great. And he's in Caddyshack. He's the guy who runs the clubhouse in Caddyshack. Big, real quick. I'm sorry, off topic, real quick. Um, he was that was who Belushi first met out of anybody. Like the whole connection with everybody. Belushi goes to New York and he meets Brian Doyle Murray, and it isn't until like 3 or 4 years later that like Bill shows up. But he's just great. He's awesome.
Yeah, he also was the boss in Christmas
He
Vacation.
is. He's great in
Yes,
that.
he was. Also a couple of the little, iconic scenes is when Winston, Ray, and Egon go down into the sub parts or the sub area of New York, and they go along the subway line that turns into be a ghost line. Um, they when they lower him below the street, it was compressed air. It was a compressed air that was actually used and that was built as the demonstration the set was as a transit system. The one block long tunnel was built prior to any other subways in the area and without any city approval, which is not good. A single station and easy chairs, statues, and a goldfish pond were put there. The line was shut down in 1873 due to lack of official and financial support. The tunnel entrance was sealed and the station was reclaimed for other uses. This is a real station that they used, and it was built in 1870 by Albert Breach. In 1912, when digging for the modern subway system, workers found the original tunnel still in good condition and the remains of the passenger car. The tunnel was removed to make way for the contemporary subway lines, and the car disappeared. So that's what that whole scene is based off the history of that finding that little piece of history back in the day of an old subway line, which I think is pretty crazy. I kind of like how you find little tidbits and nuggets like that, like especially considering how big of a nerd Dan Aykroyd is. I'm pretty sure he had something to do with putting that in there. I also love the fact that when the train ghost goes through Winston, he goes, yeah, yeah. His scream is epic. And even in the River of Slime, he does the same scream, which cracks me up. And also the bad guy in this film uh has a thing with trying to suck up to people, and the goo makes you love each other, and there's scenes where people say, "Oh, I love you, man," and he was in Wayne's World where they do the same thing. I really love you, man, and I love you. It's I wish they would have brought him back for the newer ones, but he was kind of like the slimy campaign manager for this one.
Yeah.
Uh, but this film gets a bad rap. It really does. I don't think it's as bad as people think, say it what is, but it just does. With in the Battle of Vigo and the ending, if not the Ghostbusters didn't defeat Vigo, before the New Year's Day, that Milton Anglins, who was actually Kevin Dunn's character, who predicted that the world would end at the stroke of midnight, would have came true because Vigo would have took over at the stroke of midnight. Uh, I did think it was kind of cheesy though that Vigo was defeated by people singing.
Well, I mean, we're talking about, just a legend.
Something!
Yeah.
Not so fast, Vigo. Hey, Vigo! Yeah, you, the bimbo with the baby. Didn't anybody tell you the big shoulder look is out? I have met some dumb blondes in my life, but you take the taco, pal.
Just the whole way he downs him there is again typical Murray. He's looking at the face of the end, and he's like on his side or whatever, and he's like, "Hey, you!" He's got
Yeah, Viggy, you've been a bad monkey. Just like some of the little tidbits here. A nice, iconic scene is when the release of the slime is going through the New York, played over the montage, and you have the woman with the fur coat that gets turns into real because the slime touches it into the dead animals. It starts going after her. You have the cops getting calls. One of them is a guy saying there's a giant ghost monster that they actually show in the middle of the street going through the pillars. You see that they're talking to people on the phone, and somebody says there's a dinosaur actually exists roaming around the skeleton. And then we get the famous call about the guy saying the Titanic has arrived with a cameo by the great Cheech Marin as a dock worker. The funny thing about that is the RMS Titanic was actually scheduled to arrive at Pier 59 in New York on April 17th, 1912. But after the disaster, the Carpathia dropped Titanic's lifeboats at Pier 59 and continued to port at Pier 54. Pier 54 on New York's has a memorial of this. Originally, the producers had planned to have the crashed Hindenburg appear as a ghostly airship. They dumped it in favor of the apparitions coming off the Titanic. So when Cheech Marin does say "better late than never," it was actually supposed to go to that port and pier, which I think is pretty funny. So just like stuff like that. Like I love the fact that he's in there in that little cameo. It's just it shows how big Ghostbusters was. And the music, I actually like the music in this film a lot too. Music was actually a nice little touch.
Oh, yeah.
So that's our breakdown. You want to get into the critical reception and fan theory?
Let's do it.
All right, let's go into that sucker right now.
You know that fat cocksucker says I look like the Shah of Iran?
Who does? Tony. I never got that at all.
Where's my arc, Polly? I love those videos, man. I love Soprano.
Yeah, so do I. So Ghostbusters 1984 had a budget of $30 million and made a whopping $296 million at the box office. It's considered one of the most important comedic films that merges science fiction and comedy. The great Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 stars, while Gene Siskel, who is known to hate comedy films, hated the special effects but gave it big props for the Bill Murray performance, which he said added so much to dull special effects. The film is considered a very huge cultural influence in 1984, with like I said, kids wearing the uniforms and playing with the toys. It inspired future films like MIB, Evolution, The Watch, R.I.P.D., and Pixels, which I think is a horrible film, but there's a lot of Ghostbusters throwback in that. In 2015, it was selected to the National Film Registry, which is where films that have basically impacted culture and have a big impact on the historic filmmaking are put. And this one, of course, was enshrined there. It inspired the real Ghostbusters cartoon in 1986, as well as video games for the NES, SNES, Genesis, and Xbox, which actually would become the unofficial third film. And we'll get to that after we go through Ghostbusters 2. Ghostbusters 2 had a budget of $25 million and a box office of $215 million, which is a good return but it was considered a moderate success by the studio. They expected to get more money, which is I don't know how much you're gonna get because it was actually the biggest film of that year. Ebert and Siskel disliked this film a lot and said it was a horrible sequel that didn't add anything new to the original story. Uh, Surprisingly, doing research on this, Bill Murray and Rick Moranis are very disappointed with the final cut. Murray said it was just too much special effects. Special effects basically ran the film, and Moranis came out and said he felt the film was just bad to the point that he refused to appear in the newer 2016 film Answer the Call due to a poor script. So he didn't come out of retirement for that. So this film ruined us getting back Louis Tully, which is sad. Video games are also made for that film, along with the addition of Louis Tully to become a more predominant character in the real Ghostbusters due to his success in Ghostbusters 2. We also have future Ghostbusters, not animated films, but live action, which was Afterlife, that was released a few years ago. And then we have the Frozen Empire, which was released this year. Now, the reason that the Xbox game was actually basically the third film that everybody was waiting for was Bill Murray has continuously refused to do Ghostbusters. Dan Aykroyd had a film called Ghostbusters Go to Hell for his third film that was in dormant since this film was released. They couldn't get anything to go on. Bill Murray wouldn't agree to it. Bill Murray's known to be difficult. He just said that nobody wants to see old Ghostbusters running around. They did a film in 2000. They did the video game introduction in 2009, which got the original cast to come back and reprise their roles digitally, with Brian Dole Murray playing the basic person that created the building that Dana's apartment that comes to life. And they had Alyssa Milano. It was actually a really fun game. You got to play as a Ghostbuster. Did you ever play that game?
Yes, I have. A couple times. It was fun.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's a good game. It's supposed to that was considered the unofficial third film in the trilogy. But, Murray actually it's kind of funny that Egon's actually in that film with Winston, and they Murray and Harold Ramis were not getting along. They haven't gotten along since Groundhog Day, which is a film that Ramis had directed. They were basically on non-speaking terms until the unfortunate year of 2014 when Harold Ramis got sick, and they basically went to go. Bill Murray actually went to his house to make amends, and when Egon passed, everybody thought Ghostbusters was done, and then we got Afterlife, which I'm pretty sure we can go into a deep dive later. That, and then possibly we'll go into Frozen Empire. But it's crazy.
Why not answer the call?
We can go into that too if you want.
I was kidding. It's a joke. I thought maybe you would like Answer the Call. That's how I was making it.
It was. I watched it. It's not the best, but it's not.
Yeah, do you think it's as bad as people make it out to be?
No, I'm not a big Melissa McCarthy fan.
Well, I mean, I'm can't say that I am either, and I'm same with Kate McKinnon. She's not on the top of my list, but that being said, the movie itself, I mean, Paul Feig is a pretty good director. It was not bad.
I don't think it was horrible.
A lot of people complained about the women aspect. That's where I'm trying to get at, which was stupid, I thought, because it was I don't know
about that. What I didn't like was that they use Bill Murray's in there and Dan Aykroyd is in there as different characters. I'm like, you just have them appear as the originals and just say.
Well, I get what you're saying, but like if you take a movie like Cape Fear and they bring back like Robert Mitchum and they bring back Gregory Peck, but just to show as fan service that they're a part of it, but they're not a part of it. I've seen that done before, but again, that wasn't the biggest complaint. The biggest complaint was that you got rid of the original male cast and it was an all-female cast, and I just thought it was like that had nothing to really do with is this movie good or not. I could get you not liking Melissa McCarthy because
yeah, I just her humor is not for me, but I didn't think it was horrible. Like I don't really consider it in the canon, and I guess they don't either of Ghostbusters. Need to hook my music.
No, I mean it's not canon. I just Chris. I mean there were some things. A man after my own heart. I get Dougie on to come on the show. Dougie was seeing Disturbed last night. I think was it Disturbed? No, with Drowning Pool.
They're still
let the bodies hit the floor, man. Yeah, they seem like they were hitting the floor last night.
But that's basically our critical reception of the films. Like I said, Ghostbusters 2 is not really highly praised uh, by a lot of fans. I like it. I like the music in it. I think a lot of iconic scenes in it, stick out to me. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, the movie is definitely, it's cool that you could play them back to back. You know, again, maybe after how great the first one was, and if you had seen it, maybe that's why everyone immediately doesn't like the second one. But I think they play very well back to back. Aykroyd, I mean, honestly, I'm a huge Harold Ramis fan, and seeing Harold Ramis behind the camera, in front of the camera, I think he does great in it, and it's worth checking both of them out.
Yep. So we have one fan theory, and it's a short one. This one was really interesting. I read it. It's a very long theory, but I'm just going to give you the synopsis of it. Basically, it's saying that the Ghostbusters are really not the good guys. They're actually the bad guys because they could be catching good ghosts to actually help people, whether it be spiritually or actually protect things that can danger people. They catch all these ghosts, and in the spirit realm, they're actually looked at as villains because they're disrupting the good spirits that are left here. What do you think about that?
It's interesting. It's interesting to think about, but I mean, is Vigo a good? Would Vigo be then considered a good ghost, or is he a bad
Well,
ghost?
there's like I would think there's any good people, bad people, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
saying
No,
that since they just don't
ghosts in
discriminate
general,
necessarily. Yeah,
just ghosts in general, I guess.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess in the loosest term, when this movie's made, things aren't looked at as different. Like, oh man, they could have been good ghosts, they could have been bad ghosts. Back then, they were just ghosts, and you probably shouldn't have ghosts flying around in the streets. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, like Slimer has in the comic, not comic, the cartoon, Slimer's their pet.
But that's what I mean. I mean, you
Yeah,
ever see Clerks the cartoon?
yeah,
It's a little bit different than Clerks the movie. He's not talking about, don't do this on the way out to the car.
yeah.
I mean, it's just a tiny Judge Reinhold plays a judge, just little cool stuff. But then that being said, I would rather have Slimer being around as my friend all the time. I don't know how long I'd live, but Slimer would be a good ghost to be.
He's in Frozen Empire. Just a
Is
spoiler.
he?
Yeah,
Oh,
he has a little
I'd
bit
love to
more
see him.
screen time in there.
Honestly, in Afterlife, and I've seen the commercial for the new one, just seeing the little mini Stay Puft Marshmallow people, that's awesome.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen, Empire, check that one out. Uh, so final thoughts, Tone, like, we kinda breezed through 2 films, and not as that in depth of a, walkthrough in terms of film breakdown, but went through a lot of information there. Um, what do you think of the 2 films and, like, their impact in terms of, like I said, that Ghostbusters inspired, like, Men in Black, Evolution, like, do you believe that could be true?
Yeah, yeah, I do believe it could be true. Um, I believe pretty much anything can be true, really, honestly. By what I see in this world, I've seem to have seen it all. So honestly, if the
You're like
I
90?
but what I mean by honestly, I do tonight. I do feel 90. I mean, I'm not going to be honest with you. My back started spazzing up sitting, and I had to stand up over here. So, like, yes, maybe I am 90. Maybe I am 90. But that being said, honestly, yeah, I think there could be something like that out there.
I think, I'm kinda glad this film was made back in the '80s. I don't think it could have been made to this, like,
No.
impact now, but it kinda kicked off all the comedy, of the '80s in terms of ghost films. You know, and then you went from Ghostbusters to, Ghost, and, it's such an impact on culture. In Family Guy, there's a parody of Ghost where he's helping her with the molds, and the Peter comes in and has a Ghostbuster and zaps him up and then charges her $20 due to, the impact. It just cracks me up, but yeah, I love the films. I watch them, whenever they're on. I'm trying to get my son into watching them, and he saw some of them today, some of the second ones today, which he liked. So hopefully he can start experiencing the Ghostbusters with it. He liked Afterlife, so he can experience one of the older ones with
It's
me.
really,
But
it's really cool. This week or right around the weeks where the first Ghostbusters come out, you have the first Gremlins, you have
mm,
Temple of Doom. I mean, imagine being able to go see all those 3 movies in the theater right around then. Huge
Yeah,
fan of
man.
all three, so it's been awesome.
For sure, man. For sure. So that's our Ghostbusters review, man. Let us know what you guys think about the new format in terms of the way we did it today. Uh, in the comments or at the show on Twitter or X at the show pod that is. But Tone, let's move along here because we have some stuff to get to. Let's get into what's coming soon.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Coming soon.
Próximamente.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
My man, tell us what's coming next.
Oh man, we got a pair of classics and then some for you all out there. We're going to be talking about the Alien movies. We're going to talk about how just like we did tonight, pretty much with Ghostbusters, all of the ins and the outs and the awesomeness of these incredible movies. I honestly just sat down this past Monday and watched Aliens because while we were at the recent baseball game this last Saturday, you turned to me and you go, tonight seems like an Aliens night. I actually came home and walked through the door and I told Katie, I go, we're watching Aliens tonight, but then I passed out on the couch and didn't get to it. So Monday I watched Aliens and man, love these movies. It's gonna be a great time.
Yeah, two classic movies with a new Alien being released. The new Alien. What's the name of the film, Tom?
The newest one, it's going to be called Now You Got Me. You put me on a spot now that I forgot. It is called, what is it? Alien. Hold on a second. Romulus. Alien Romulus, which is honestly really cool. Read a little bit. The director was talking about it. Okay. So this movie takes place like on a ship. Okay. I guess it's two ships that are connected. One ship has the technology of like Alien, and the other ship has a technology of aliens. And the one that has the ship technology of aliens is called Romulus. I forgot the name of the other ship. I don't know what's going to go on out here outside in space, folks, but if you see the trailer, face huggers are flying everywhere. I'm really excited because, frankly, these are some of my favorites. Again, I think they're both very cool in their own way.
Yeah, Alien itself is an impactful film. It's one of the first horror films that was sci-fi in space. It coined the phrase "No one can hear you scream in space." It also was one of the first films that have a lead role, strong female lead role. That was a badass in Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver. So we're actually going from her in Ghostbusters to her in these two films, and we'll be doing a so Alien Centipede, yes, Dougie. We'll be doing a film breakdown for both, basically the way we did today, along with film development, a little bit more in depth to see how the film was written and stuff like that. And we'll get into some, how the film was received by critics, and if there are any crazy fan theories out there that make sense enough to read, because there are a lot of fan theories for the films that I see. A lot of them just don't make sense. But yeah, really, really looking forward to this one. I know, Tone, you're really excited. You're a huge Alien fan. Human Centipede. I might do. I usually do every year for those who have followed me or the channel the channels and works I've been. I do 30 days of horror or 31 days of horror with representing our show. Human Centipede is definitely on for this year for that one. So I do a lot of obscure.
I can't wait to see this. This is
but
there's
yeah,
so many movies. There's a movie, honestly, because of you, I see it all the time now, and I think of you. It's Nefarious.
Nefarious, yeah.
Because of watching your video, and I had never heard of the movie, but now I know the movie because of you. That's why you got to watch these little clips, folks. They're awesome.
Yeah, check them out on our YouTube channel. There's 2 playlists, one for the first year I did it, and one for this year I did it. But yeah, I'll be doing the 31 days of horror. I'll probably be burnt out by then, but looking forward to it. It's actually I'm writing a list now to go through the films, and I'll knock those out and to release them throughout October. But yeah, looking forward to Alien and Aliens. 2 great films. The second is considered one of the greatest sequels of all time. It's also made by the person that made probably the greatest sequel of all time in terms of Terminator 2, James Cameron. So 2 great films. We will get to them next week. But we will be going on a different schedule. The White Sox are in town, so we're going to be going Sunday at 2 o'clock, so 2 p.m. So if the White Sox are sucking it up at, they're playing horrible, tune in for some Aliens talk. It's gonna be a Sunday game, a Sunday day to do go through it. So we won't be returning on Friday. It'll be Sunday at 2. Um, but with that tone, let's get into our final segment and let's do our Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week. The Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week.
Folks, really quick, we're very rarely ever going to go pick a country type of soundtrack here at Sugar Baggies Pick of the Week. Tonight, I am picking Urban Cowboy for quite a couple reasons. Number one, honestly, I like this movie quite a lot. It was brought to my attention by my mother, who this week, if she was still alive, would be celebrating her 67th birthday. So I often think back to things that were kind of shown to me. And, I always like this song. I don't know. Looking for love in all the wrong places. You might have heard it in country songs. But the soundtrack itself and the movie itself, if you're into like that Johnny Cash, that Waylon Jennings type of country music, not, the new pop country, Urban Cowboy is pretty cool, and I like John Travolta's performance in it, and just a really cool movie and a cool soundtrack. Thought I'd share that tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Man, country music. I'm not a huge fan of country.
I am not. I'm a fan of honestly, and it took somebody to show me, but like this Waylon Jennings and like there was this show that was on. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It was called Tales from the Tour Bus. It was by Mike Judge. It was like a cartoon. The first season was every episode was like about country artists from like a long time ago. And like some of these guys did more crazier stuff than like the Stones. So like to me in my head, that's when I was like, okay, let's look into some of this stuff. And honestly, it's again a different style than everything else that you'd listen to, but it's like you throw it on every once in a while just to change it up, give a little bit of a different vibe. But definitely, that's pretty much not a huge country fan though. So like I stated off the top of my head right now, if you were to put me on, I don't even know another soundtrack that would have a country song that I would pick, but that's why I thought I'd get this one out of the way because honestly, it's actually a pretty good. You ever see Urban Cowboy?
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's what it is. It's not like, oh my God, this is Goodfellas or Scorsese. It's literally Travolta playing a cowboy. I really like in the movie from Backdraft, Scott Glenn. He plays a real jag, just like he does in Backdraft. But different. And yeah, definitely. That's why it's something like a different time. I love movies that see, he says the editing of Urban Cowboy is weird. There's a scene in the movie that I find really weird is that he's supposedly like 90 feet up in the air and he falls off of the crane and he literally just has like a broken arm or something when in reality he would have been donezo. Interesting movie. That's my soundtrack pick.
Very, very random pick, Tone. Not gonna lie. But,
honestly, what I like to do is like you send me your movie picks, I look at my movie picks, then I'm looking at Ghostbusters, and then in my head I'm going, how cool would it be if we went from Ghostbusters, Aliens, Urban Cowboy? No one ever does that. That's why our show's so unique, folks.
Now check it out. I haven't seen Urban Cowboy in a long time. I have to watch it again.
Watch it with don't watch it by yourself. Maybe watch it with the wife, watch it with the person you love. It's a good one to sit down.
I will check out the soundtrack though, because I am a huge fan of Johnny Cash. I'm not a big country person, like in terms of traditional country like Garth Brooks, but I do. My wife actually got me into Keith Urban, which I don't really consider him country though. He's more like I guess.
To imagine that the movie came out in like 1980, so this is all 1980 country, and honestly, 1980 country is nothing even like Garth Brooks.
George Strait.
It's a little bit closer to like we're starting to get there right there.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the pick, Tone. So that's our show. Be sure to tune in tonight. Still, we have the Trios champions to come back and talk some WrestleMania for us. That's Comic Punk Guy, and fellow Penguin Brian S., along with Chicago sports bum Baloney to come on and talk preview for WrestleMania. They'll be coming out after us in a little bit. Be sure to check out the Sadistic Penguin Studios on YouTube. We have some videos dropping there. Also, our website, sadisticpenguinstudios.com. We'll have blogs, all our podcasts there. We will be releasing some new stuff coming soon. Once my computer is done, I have a ton of ideas to get stuff out for films and reviews. So check those out. Check out Tony's The Hookup on Music. He just did a mailbag episode, on Wednesday.
And speaking of mailbag episodes, this Wednesday we got Mailman Jack's going to be joining us, who's come on this show and talked awesome movies. He's going to talk a little bit of music on Wednesday.
So be sure to check that out. And we will be seeing you guys next Sunday at 2 p.m. So you guys have a good night.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the At the Show podcast, a Sadistic Penguin Studios production.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?